and the East Coast in the United States, and good evening to those who are tuning in from Turkey and other parts of Europe and the Middle East. I am delighted to be moderating this discussion today. My name is Marissa Khurma, and I'm the founder and CEO of Amena Strategies, and a former director of the Middle East program at the Wilson Center here in Washington, D.C. So today's conversation is a very timely and a very important one, and underrepresented in a lot of the media discussions today. When does being a refugee end? Discussion about identity, belonging, and political shifts in a rapidly changing world. I'm very pleased to be introducing our main speaker, Çiğdem Donmez Penn, who is the founder and principal advisor of XSIGHTS Research and Consultancy. She, of course, has been working in various sectors for many years and has been instrumental in providing market research and evaluation projects for large companies across more than 100 countries. She's got offices in London, in Ankara, and in Istanbul, and collaborates with both public sector, private sector, as well as other international and regional organizations. She has various surveys and various research projects that are focused on the Syrian refugee crisis, which of course has taken a bit of a turn since the fall of the Assad regime almost a year ago. So, Çiğdem, I'm going to turn this over to you so that you can kick us off with some very interesting findings from your most recent project about the Syrian refugees in Syria. Over to you.
Thank you, Marissa, and thank you for moderating this discussion. I believe your contribution will be valuable and very relevant. I'm glad to have met through this webinar, and I hope to work together in the future as well. Today, I would like to sum up some of the findings and some of the insights that we have come across during our more than 10 years of research with Syrians. So, you know, one of our offices is in Turkey, and Anatolia is very familiar with immigration and refugees, and throughout the history, it has been a land of different movements, both in terms of politics and demographic shifts. So this is not a coincidence that today Turkey, or Turkey, this is new name, is the country which accommodates the highest number of refugees. That's no coincidence. Anatolia has been the cradle of acceptance and inclusion and integration for many, many, many centuries. And we've conducted several research on behalf of our clients. But this one that I'm going to share the findings of today is a research that we have actually done for ourselves, just to understand and to show what has happened and what's the impact of all those development efforts that have been carried out in the last 15 years and what that meant for the Syrians. So we went to representative sample of Syrians, 1,000 of them. They were aged between 18 and 64 in different cities of Turkey where the population of Syrians is really high. We conducted the interviews like face to face using computer assisted programming interviews. So it was all very live, and we were able to connect with the respondents on the field and got tons of insights from them. And carried out quite a few statistical tests. And today, the relations that I'm going to talk about, they are statistically proven. So we conducted t-tests, one-way analysis of variance, Pearson correlations, and many others. And the findings that I'll be sharing today, they are tested and statistically approved. So the research that we have conducted is very detailed, but I would like to give the findings in the context of Maslow and its hierarchy of needs, which I don't think needs explaining, but Maslow had created this hierarchy of needs with 5 different levels, and the bottom line is their physiological, the respondents' physiological needs, such as like air, water, food, shelter, sleeping, clothing, and so forth. So whoever we contacted during our survey, they had discovered. So no one was still in the camps, no one was in an institution or homeless. They were actually living in households and with average 5 people in it. The households that they lived in had an average of 3.3 or 3.4 rooms, which is quite a standard way of living in Turkey. So the second one is their safety needs, and we can see that the sample had access to healthcare services, educational services, some of the services provided by NGOs. And they have taken use of them. They were fairly satisfied with these services. So one can assume that, their needs were met in that sense. We have conducted a lot of studies about the level of satisfaction about education, health, and NGOs. And on average, these ratings are higher than the local community, like the level of satisfaction that we measure among Turkish people. So they were fairly satisfied with the services that they received. What our research focused next was love and belonging. So that is an important and more sophisticated need. So after we have our physiological and safety needs met, we strive for higher level of needs. So we want friendships, we want intimacy, we want to build families, we want to have a sense of connection with the community that we live in. And we want to have social contact, and we want to feel accepted where we are. When we look at the figures from Turkey, 71% of participants stated that they have good relationship with their neighbors, while 28% of them said that they experience varying degrees of social exclusion since arriving in Turkey. So it is interesting that how a person's life quality changes with the connections that person is able to do. And our survey actually demonstrated in our statistical analysis indicated that Syrians who engage in more positive social contact with Turkish people are more likely to consider long-term settlement in Turkey, while Syrians who engage in less positive social contact with Turkish people are more likely to want to return to their home country. So in a way, as humans, like refugee or not, immigrant or not, what we are looking is connection. As humans, we need to connect. And if we cannot connect with the host communities as an immigrant or a refugee, it becomes very difficult to continue living there, even though our basic needs of, like food and shelter and safety are met. So the next one is esteem, like whether we are appreciated, recognized, whether we feel strong, we feel free in that society that we had just arrived. So when we look at social coherence or social distance, we call it in different terms, we see that, interestingly, that they say, okay, I feel safe in Turkey. I'm able to carry out my daily life comfortably. I feel that I'm treated with respect as an individual in Turkey. These are very, very important and strong indicators of being recognized and appreciated in a society. Um, and then our analysis shows that among these different factors, having lower stress levels, positive social interactions, and higher sense of safety and comfort, they actually help towards social cohesion, and those people plan to stay in Turkey in the long term. And if they don't have that, they are more likely to return to Syria. So in a way, like if any government, or if any society, they want to integrate those people who immigrated to their country, it is very, very easy. So all they have to do is just like, give them lower level of stress, positive social instructions, and some level of recognition for their contribution. If a government or, any institution does not want them to integrate, all they have to do is just to put a lot of pressure and stress to the immigrants or refugees. So, in the context of US today, what ICE is doing and what ICE is representing is actually a lot of stress. So they're putting a lot of stress on refugees or immigrants or people who are here one way or another. And just the very existence of ICE actually is enough to alienate them and to make them less likely to integrate. So that's another discussion if we want to integrate immigrants into the society, into the economy or not. And, World Economic Forum and many other institutions actually proved that immigration and refugees, they have positive impact on economy. But, for sociological or political or demographical reasons, um, sometimes governments do not choose to integrate them into the society, or they feel like they can have better versions of immigrants to come, and they think that they will contribute more. This may not be true. As long as any immigrant, either economic or political, or just a lifestyle immigrant, they have to feel accepted and recognized. If not, they will want to go back and they will not contribute and they will actually marginalize themselves, which is associated with a lot of other problems. The last level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is self-actualization. And in our study, we have asked about intention to return because that's very indicative of where you want to actually actualize yourself. Like we all need to become the most that we can become. We all strive to be the best that we can be, to actualize our potential. And self-actualization is in process once actually all these needs are met. So we feel safe, we feel loved, we feel accepted, we feel recognized, and only after we can start self-actualization. So, therefore, in the context of immigrants, it's very important, like where they plan to live in the next 5, 10 years or so. So we asked that, and in our survey, 44% of the Syrians, they said that they would like to return to Syria. This is another thing I would like to share here in this webinar, is that often host communities think that refugees, immigrants, they will stay here forever. You know, none of them want to go back. That is simply not true. You know, because most of the research that we have conducted actually indicates that people who are displaced for one reason or another, they do miss their home country. They do miss what they had before. They do want to go back when the conditions get better. So in that sense, this findings was not a surprise to us. So 44% wants to go back to Syria, and many have since the political situation in Syria has stabilized a bit. And 30% said that they don't want to, and then 27% they were hesitant about it. When we look at the data, we see the relationship between trust and return of intention very related. So those who want to return to Syria, they they have high level of trust in the future of Syria, and they have kind of like moderate to high trust in Turkey. And then those who want to actually stay in Turkey or immigrate to a third country, they trust Turkey highly, and they don't trust the future in Syria that much. You know, they have their hesitations about Syria. This survey is actually posted on our website, and we have a lot of insight from these different surveys, again posted on our website. So if you work in this area and if you want to have more insight to our findings, you're most welcome to share these links. We'll be sharing these links with you. And then you're most welcome to ask questions, and we'll be happy to answer if you think that it will be useful for your line of work. Okay, so yes, I
Thank
think
you. Thank you so
that's
much.
about what I'd like to share today. We have plenty of more information and insight, and be happy to share them in any context. But yes, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you. This was a very interesting presentation. So I would like to actually ask the first question and perhaps give some time to others to mull over their own questions, either send them here in the chat or just raise your hand and I will call on you. So this is, as you mentioned, is a very critical time to understand a lot of these behaviors and attitudes precisely because of the political shifts that we saw in Syria. And as you mentioned, gradual stabilization, but of course, it's not fully there. I'm wondering if, there's another question that we can inject into this discussion, going back to your comment about, well, actually, most refugees do not want to stay. They want to go back to their home countries, right? And they want to contribute and rebuild. But then, having had that experience in Turkey, many of the children were born in Turkey. They picked up the language. How does this community of Syrians that spent over a decade in Turkey, once they go back, how can they be a bridge between the two countries?
I mean, being a refugee or an immigrant, it's a skill. So we learn a lot while we immigrate and live in a different country. So all these people came from Syria at the beginning of 2010.
Hmm.
They learned so much about Turkish culture. They learned so much about a whole new economy. They had to gain very specific skills, a whole new language, entrepreneurial skills. They had to um, perhaps like get trained, retrained, upscaled.
Hmm.
So have um, they have enriched themselves in a way that they would have not had they stayed in their own country. So anything we learn in life never goes to waste. So they
Hmm.
go back to Syria, and then whatever they learned will be very useful for rebuilding their country if they choose to go back. And if they don't go back, then and they choose to stay in Turkey, they will be contributing towards Turkish economy or maybe to their own economy too by remittance, contributions. So yes, it is an unfortunate series of events that Turkey had to host so many Syrians over such a long time. But overall, I am a strong believer that both countries will be benefiting from it in terms of cultural, economic, and also like political relations.
Hmm.
Yes, so I think after living with so many Syrians for so many years in Turkey, it is easier for Turkish people to understand them, and the same applies to Syria. I believe that the economic and political connections between two countries will be stronger than ever.
Hmm.
So. I mean, I don't know if I answered your question fully. I can only see a positive impact
Hmm.
from all those.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
absolutely. And
demographic.
like and like you said, it's important to highlight these positives because of the politicization of immigration and essentially, weaponizing this issue, not just in the Middle East and North Africa region, but it's unfortunately something that we see across the world. I don't see any hands here, but I can follow up with one more question, which I think is probably the last one before we have to conclude this discussion. So you mentioned something about satisfaction with regards to the services, health, education, and other NGOs providing different types of services. And you said that in some cases you're seeing higher satisfaction levels amongst the Syrians than the host communities or the Turks. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Because this is a phenomenon that we've seen in other countries. I think in Lebanon, it was probably the most tense. In Jordan, less so. But having born, I was born and raised there, and I worked on a lot of these projects in Jordan. I definitely heard this from many of the Jordanians who were hosting in their towns and villages. So can you elaborate a little bit more
Sure,
on that? Thank
definitely.
you.
Yes. I mean, we conduct a lot of surveys on behalf of ministries in Turkey. And when we conduct satisfaction surveys with health services, There are a lot of issues. First of all, among the host communities. So, first of all, I would say that um, there has been a surge of funds by the European Union um, to Turkey to improve health services for Syrians under temporary protection. So
Mm,
Syrians have been given translators, doctors who speak in Arabic. They
mhm,
have been given different facilities in some cities, and they have been kind of very well serviced in that sense. And also Syrians, when they have come to Turkey, I believe they had a lower expectation from health
mm,
services than
mhm,
an
mhm, mhm,
average Turkish person has. So that created some kind of a reaction among Turkish people
mhm,
saying that, oh,